Good afternoon, brethren. Today is April the 19th, 2018. I'm going to quickly get into this word today because I've had numerous interruptions just trying to put forth this message that Father wants me to speak to the church. I want to give all praise and glory to Father Yahuwah, our Mashiach, Yahushua, and the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, for imparting all wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. 3 nights ago, I was given a dream, a very detailed dream. And in this dream, I was shown the scene was in Antarctica. Those of you who have been following along this channel since the beginning know that Father has given me several visions and dreams regarding Antarctica. I will include any related links to this message in the pinned message area. So please, it's very important that you take the initiative to look at those so that you understand a little bit more about today's message. It all has to do with timing, and Father is precise, and Father knows their plans in deceiving us, and perhaps it's their plan to instill great fear upon us. But nevertheless, this is Father's beckoning, and I must be obedient. So in this dream 3 nights ago, I was shown a scene in Antarctica again, and I was shown that there was a large wall that draped over it was a big swastika German flag over it, just like you see this sign here on the symbolism on Hitler's left arm. The UFO fleet that I was shown housed in Antarctica looked very similar to what's on the screen here, so please keep that in mind for a visual. Okay, so over this large wall was draped over a big German, it's not even big, it was large, a large German flag that was draped over it. And I was shown a fleet of very sophisticated black and grayish in color of UFOs. They were strategically parked. Okay, that will make a little bit more sense in just a moment. I was allowed and shown the departure of one of these crafts and how it returned meticulously to a red tip landing. It seemed to have some kind of gravity or magnetic capability attached to this red point of some sort. As the UFO, once it landed, it would not only it would land on this red tip, and because of what was on this red tip, it allowed it to land the craft, and it would position it in such a way so that it was strategically placed amongst the other UFOs in this fleet. It would be suspended in air on its side as the other ones were. So again, they were strategically aligned. Now, in a previous vision, I was shown that there would be UFOs, re-engineered UFOs, that would come to a city near you, is what I was given in this vision. And those particular crafts were reconstructed by man, re-engineered. Now, in order for the officials to know the difference, the distinction between the two crafts, these ones were not as sleek as the ones housed in Antarctica, but they were UFOs that had individually green tips. So, again, very interesting how this red tip comes into play and how this green tip comes to play. I'm not quite sure as to why, other than what I was given in that vision was those particular crafts that were re-engineered held that mark so to distinguish them between the others, just so you're aware. Now, moving forward, Father has given me other visions that I will include in the pinned message, those links so that you can reference them, and I will put the dates on them. But in one of the visions, Father had showed me that he was showing me in Antarctica. I was walking next alongside him, and he was showing me the plain area. And one of the things he had me speak was, he said clearly that we are to draw ever so near to him once we start witnessing the ice sheets melt and break away. The last couple of days, of course, since that vision, I have been monitoring the activity in Antarctica, and lately they've said something about discovering active volcanoes there and that the waters were at 40 degrees. So just a mindful point there. Now, there is such a thing called the Antarctica Treaty, which was signed in December 1st, 1959. It is very much in effect, and not the common man can just go over there whenever they feel like it. No, it is all political and religious leaders that have recently visited there. The reason this is important, and you will see the reference here in these two short clips that I'm going to give, is Hitler also was he was visiting Antarctica before the war broke out. So it's very important that you pay mindful attention to what's given in these there's one interview and there's one detailed research on this subject. Okay, now Admiral Byrd, who was a Navy official, was allowed an expedition to go on an expedition there, and it was a huge expedition. Okay, now he also said that there's a huge portion of Antarctica that had not been explored, and we were going to get into that here shortly. So let me go ahead and start with the first clip, okay? Hold on just one moment. And if you will, please pay mindful attention to detail, because this is what Father is showing us.
In January 1939, Nazi Germans on a secret expedition arrived in Dronning-Maud Land, Antarctica. Although Norway had made claims to Dronning-Maud Land, the Germans disregarded this, and on arrival they punctured the ice with German flags and draped swastikas from their aircraft, marking a new addition to the German Reich. Authorized by Hermann Goering, the expedition had been sent there with the aim to locate a possible whaling base, as, with international tensions growing, Germany needed to be self-sufficient. But with the war approaching, the expedition had a second, even more secret objective: to establish a German base. They christened their new territory Antarctica Neuschwabenland, which translates to New Swabia, after the German city. In March, encouraged by the expedition's finds, Germany made an official announcement that they had discovered and mapped large new areas of Antarctica from their aircraft. A series of future expeditions were planned to take place soon after, but by September, Nazi Germany was at war. Historians, such as Colin Summerhayes and Peter Beeching, state that the declaration of war meant the end of the Nazis' ambitions to build a secret base in Antarctica. But could it be possible that in the depths of the Arctic ice, the Nazis had succeeded in building their base? Was Neuschwabenland the last true Nazi stronghold? On the 10th of July, just 2 months after Germany had surrendered, the first of 2 Nazi U-boats docked in an Argentine naval base. The emergence of these 2 U-boats set off speculation about the objective of these last war submarines and what they were doing in the southern hemisphere. Were these U-boats completing the final mission in the relocation of the Nazi regime?
Brethren, please pay close attention to the very end of this at the 6:50, about the 6:50 mark. Pay attention to what he says.
One of the captains of the U-boats, Lieutenant Otto Vermuth, had chosen to dock in Argentina as they assumed they would have been well received. In fact, an estimated 9,000 Nazis relocated to Argentina in the years after the war. Was there another benefit to the Nazis re-emerging in Argentina? Geographically, it would be the perfect location to bridge the modern world with a base in Antarctica. Suspicion increased, and journalist Ladislas Jabo published a detailed account in the Argentine newspaper La Critica, reporting that Hitler hadn't committed suicide, but had fled Germany in a submarine and was hiding in Dronning-Maud Land, Antarctica. The story was picked up, and major newspapers worldwide ran the headline, "Hitler's on ice in Antarctic." 2 years later, Jabo solidified his theory in his book, Hitler is Alive. According to Jabo, the Nazi base was the size of a small city. The base served as a refuge, sheltering hundreds of people who, if Germany lost the war, could continue to make powerful new weapons for an eventual resurgence. Beuchner and Bernhardt, conspiracists who investigated the story, reported that by the middle of the 1940s, submarines were bringing in vast stores of food, clothing, fuel, and every other conceivable item necessary for setting up Hitler's refuge. During the next 4 years, shelters were built, and a mountain was scooped out. It was reportedly powered by a vast network of underground warm water rivers, geothermal lakes, and volcanic activity. Whilst there are active volcanoes and hydrothermal vents of hot water in the Antarctic, volcanoes and geothermal activity are more than 1,200 kilometers north of Dronning Maudland, the reported site of the base. Whilst there is no known photographic evidence for the Antarctica base, writers such as Jabo have relayed unconfirmed witness statements, including that of Admiral Dönitz, a German naval commander who served as president of Germany for a month in 1945. Reportedly, Dönitz told the Nuremberg trials that the Nazis had succeeded in building an invulnerable fortress, a paradise-like oasis in the middle of eternal ice. In December 1946, American ships reached Antarctica as part of a classified mission named Operation High Jump, involving 4,700 men, 33 aircraft, and 13 ships. It was the largest ever expedition to Antarctica. Declassified documents reveal that Operation High Jump's official goals included consolidating and extending United States sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent. But conspiracy theorists Matten and Friedrich claim there was an ulterior motive for the expedition. According to them, High Jump's leader, Admiral Byrd, admitted the objective was to break the last desperate resistance of Adolf Hitler. Beuchner and Bernhardt claim that the American group anchored near the German-claimed territory of Neuschwabenland and then divided into 3 separate task forces. It is reported that the German base was located quickly by Byrd's crew, but the operation was cancelled after they were attacked by German flying saucers. In the aftermath of what he had witnessed, Admiral Byrd reflected that, in case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Historians, however, have stated that the Americans did not find a German base, and their quick withdrawal was in fact due to the early onset of winter. It is speculated that it wasn't until 1958 that the Americans had finally developed weapons to match that of the Nazis, the W-25 warhead. In the Southern Hemisphere, America secretly dropped 3 nuclear weapons. Neo-Nazis such as Wilhelm Landig believe these attacks targeted Dronning Maudland and finally annihilated the last remnants of the Third Reich. However, declassified documents have now revealed that these nuclear attacks didn't occur in Dronning Maudland, where Norwegian, Belgian, British and Japanese scientists had been living since the war. The nuclear explosions in fact took place 1,760 kilometers southwest of South Africa, and aimed to investigate the effects of a nuclear explosion outside of the atmosphere. Historians Summer Hayes and Beeching have worked hard to debunk the myth surrounding Hitler's rumoured Antarctic base. Whilst there are elements of historic truth to the legend, they argue that it is wrong to weave individual events in Antarctica into a cohesive narrative without evidence. Nevertheless, the conspiracy has thrived. In the 1970s, a re-emergence of neo-Nazi writers, such as H. Stevens, claimed that the Nazis had survived the nuclear attacks, protected by their vast network of caves deep beneath the mountains. Stevens predicts that a massive Nazi military force of highly advanced UFOs, known as the Last Battalion, are still active in Antarctica, and when the time is right, this base will be the launch site of a new world order.
Hi guys.
Okay, so you heard it there. Excuse me. That's what I wanted you to pay attention to, besides the what Admiral Byrd had made mention of. It's really important that you play this back if you have any, if you want to hear it a little bit more clearer. And then I'm going to go ahead and play this part here of the interview with Admiral Byrd. So again, please pay attention to detail.
It's time for the Longines Chronoscope, a television journal of the important issues of the hour, brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A presentation of the Longines Whitnor Watch Company, maker of Longines, the world's most honored watch, and Whitnor, distinguished companion to the world-honored Longines. Good evening, this is Frank Knight. May I introduce our co-editors for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope? Larry Lasser, CBS News correspondent, and Kenneth Crawford, National Affairs Editor of Newsweek magazine. Our very distinguished guest for this evening is Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
The North Pole used to be a no-man's land, but these are the days when, by buying a ticket on a commercial airliner, you can fly across the North Pole and drink a cocktail at the same time. You know, only 30 or more years ago, about 35 years ago, Our guest tonight found out whether there was any land north of the North American continent. He made that first discovery flight, and I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Well, Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
Well, Admiral,
Yeah.
would you say that since you've been to both the extremities of Earth, are these expeditions to such far-off places, are they getting easier because of modern techniques, or is danger still close at hand?
Well, it's a little risky, but nothing like it used to be with the old slow planes and the small cruising radius where we had to put down bases. We replaced the dog teams, and of course that was a big improvement. But now the planes go much faster and they are safer, and they have a much bigger cruising radius. You haven't got the danger of a terribly heavy load.
Admiral, an expedition to which I believe you're the advisor is now en route. What is that expedition doing?
Well, that's the icebreaker Atka, and it's a reconnaissance expedition. It's going down to the South Pole area to make certain observations and to look for some bases. They will be back in April, and they will report back, and upon the information we get from that undertaking, we will base the bigger expedition that's to follow.
Is that very definitely planned, or is that...
That is being planned right now. So I'm willing to say to you that there will be a number of expeditions that will follow, I think, year after year, bottom of the world, because the government has really become interested.
Well, Admiral Byrd, I can understand, I think everybody can, the interest in the North Pole because it's so near our greatest challenger, Soviet Russia. But why this interest in the bottom of the world? Nobody living down there, is there?
No, it's pretty cold. There's only one permanent resident, that's the emperor penguin. The little ones live further north. I tell you one reason they're interested. It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's why the scientific groups all over the nation are really interested. But more important than that, it has to do with the future of the nation, those to come after us, or even during your lifetime. Because it happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources. And, as the world shrinks with an ever-increasing acceleration, far-flung places once useless, like we thought the North Pole was, and no man's land, become very useful. The bottom of the world will be important, not only to us, but to our allies.
I was going to ask you, does it have military importance?
It has some, and as the world shrinks, it will continue to shrink with an ever-increasing acceleration, thus bringing these places closer. And in the future, I can see a time when it will be very, very important strategically.
Well, has the development of air power increased the strategic importance of places like the
very much so.
Palma Peninsula, we'll say?
Very much so. Even now, if anything happened and we lost the Panama Canal, we would have to control the islands just north of Antarctica, which are part of Antarctica. Then between there and Cape Horn.
I've heard it said that there are 7 continents in the world, and one of them has never been seen by a woman, and that's Antarctica. Is that actually true?
Well, if the Palma Peninsula is an island, as far as I know, that's true. No woman's ever stepped foot upon the Antarctic continent, and it's the most peaceful place in the world.
Well, I'm sure that won't last very long. I understand now that you're working with the Arnold Bread Company in charge of frozen foods. Now, is there any future for frozen foods down these frozen extremities?
Well, I think the human race can be helped by that. This was thought out by Dean Arnold, who's, in my opinion, a great humanitarian. He learned that we went down there after 4 or 5 years and finished a meal that we had left there on the table when we had evacuated Little America. Everything was perfect, including the bread. So he got the idea of this frozen bread, and already he sent some to Europe, and it worked very well over there for some of the starving people. So you can store it down in the Antarctic, and against the lean years, and you wouldn't have any people in the world really starving if you did that.
Yeah, so in the event of an atomic war...
Stay there forever.
Admiral, you speak of the resources of Antarctica. What are they? What are the natural resources there?
Well, we've found enough coal within 180 miles of the South Pole in a great ridge of mountains. It's not covered with snow, enough to supply the whole world for quite a while.
Well,
that's the coal. Now, there's evidence of many other minerals. We are pretty sure there's oil. Now, that coal shows the bottom of the world. Now, by far the coldest spot in the world. Where that coal is gets 100 below zero in the winter.
Well,
it was once tropical. So we think there's oil there, and there's evidence, probably uranium there.
is it any secret? Is there uranium there? That would be the only thing that would be practical to actually go after, I suppose. Everything else would be economically unfeasible, wouldn't it?
Well, as we recklessly expend our resources, the time will come when we'll have to go after that stuff down there.
Well,
I avoided what you said about uranium. I'm not sure about that. I don't want to have the world fighting over the Antarctica.
And Robert, is there a competition among other nations to try to get information about Antarctica and possibly to secure some of these resources?
Well, yes. There are now 7 nations very much interested. Russia is interested tremendously. That I'm sure of. Australia has an expedition down there. The Argentine, the Chile, New Zealand, Britain, and so on. Now, you can understand those people down there being interested because they live down there. The New Zealanders, the Argentinians, the Chileans, and Australians. And so we don't do much about claiming anything.
Admiral, you make it sound a little crowded. Are there that many expeditions now there or en route there?
Well, as I said, it's the most peaceful place in the world, but I don't think it will be for long because of this intense interest on the part of other nations and this nation.
Well, Admiral Byrd, are private expeditions a thing of the past? Is expedition and exploration, making expedition and exploration now purely a government function because of the tremendous cost
No, I don't think so. I think down south it may be more or less a thing of the past, but not other expeditions that go. There's a lot of them go north now.
This latest expedition now on the way is a government expedition, I take it.
Yes, that's the government.
However, may I ask you, is there a great difference between the top of the world and the bottom of the world?
There is. Now, the North Pole is the center of an ocean 10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents that are slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice, frozen seas of at least 1,200 miles thick. Now, the south is a plateau. It gets, in some places, 14,000 feet up. I've been over areas about 13,000, and it's a little bit chilly up there. So there's that big difference between the top and bottom of the world. The north really isn't very cold up there on the Arctic Ocean.
Not compared to the south. Admiral Byrd, we often hear it said that our young Americans now aren't as hardy as their forefathers. Do you think that Americans do measure up to the standards, the physical standards and morale standards of the past?
I do. I don't believe that. I think they're just as hardy.
Well, what would you say was the most valuable factor on an expedition? Is it morale, or physical courage, or is it It's your equipment.
Well, I've always thought that loyalty was by far the most important trait. The British told me that when I first went down in 28, that I couldn't possibly get through the winter night without a mutiny if I took more than 20 men. But to serve science, I had to take 42 men. Then I took 56 the next time, and so on. So, and I did find that loyalty was the most important thing during the winter night when it's very hard on your nerves. I think that's best trait.
Well, that's a very valuable characteristic at any time. Well, thank you very much, Admiral Byrd.
Okay, guys, so that is the last clip that I felt led to share with you. And again, I'm going to go ahead and include the other visions that Father has given me, specifically how Antarctica comes into play in these end times, and how very important it is for us to keep watch and basically monitor the activity going on in Antarctica. From what I gather, it's obviously because of the deception that's coming, and also because apparently, as mentioned in the first video, they are already set up to use Antarctica base that Hitler and his men had set up there, and it's going to be a base where they can fly in and out of. Now, if you notice in the last video, they mentioned about New Zealand and Australia. Well, many of us know, if you've been paying attention to prophecy, that many of the elite are moving to that area. So it's just something to keep in mind. But nevertheless, I think overall the message here today is Father is letting us know how close we are to this big deception coming. And it's amazing how more frequent the sightings of UFOs and whatnot have come into play. So it's just very important that we are not given a spirit of fear, but we know that if we stay grounded in Father and we stay focused on Him, we know that we cannot be shaken. So please just keep that in mind. And please, I would encourage the listener to please take to the links that I'm going to add here shortly, so that you see how it coincides with the prophetic visions and dreams that Father has given me and asked and instructed me to share with the church. So may Father Yahuwah bless us all, and I love you very much.